Salutations, my friends, and welcome to a new video. Now, because the end of year is here, it is time for us to do a yearly tradition at this point, much like the mid-year freakout tag that happens toward June, July of every single year, to see how our reading is doing until that point of the year and see what we're excited about to read for the rest of the year, if we have found any particular favorites, and to overall just check in on everybody's reading. At the end, there is another book tag that can be done called the end of year book tag that was created by Ariel Bassett. So every year I come on here to chat with you guys a little bit more about what my reading has been looking like closer to end of year, and also see if there is still any time to accommodate any specific reads, and also see if there is still the possibility of books surprising me and becoming new favorites. I always find these videos very fun and interactive because you guys get to reply to all of these questions in the chat, in the comment section, what have you. And so I would love for you guys to look at the questions, see from your own reading list how you're doing, if you relate to any of these, if you've got a specific answer for any of them, and feel free to comment in the comment section what your replies would be, what your end of year book tag is. Do share with the class. I'd love to see you guys' answers. And so without further ado, welcome friends, the end of year book tag. This year I'm doing it later than most years because I feel like most years I typically do it around September. So doing it in November is quite bold of me given that we only have a month and a half left of the year. But again, I am hopeful for my reading from here on till December, so I think we still have time. It is never too late, and I'm very excited about it still. For question number one, we have got, are there any books you started this year that you need to finish? Oh boy, do I always have some. In fact, all three books that I still have ongoing that I started this year are all books that I started on the exact same month. I think I started all of these in August, I believe. But now that I am thinking, considering, simmering on the idea of mood reading, essentially for the rest of the year to allow myself space to finish ongoing reads and just pick up whatever I want as a little reward of following my TBR essentially for the entirety of the year, I think these will be finished, hopefully, fingers crossed, by the time that the year ends. The books in question are right here, all three very exciting reads for me specifically, and one read even that is in my top 10 books to read in 2024, so in my yearly TBR. First off, we have got Chain Gang All-Stars. As you'll be able to tell, I have a really bad habit of starting books and perhaps not finishing them because I get distracted by something else. For Chain Gang All-Stars specifically, I got exactly 15 pages in. Listen, I did technically get further than that in ebook format, but then I took my bookmark back so that I could place it on page 15, starting a new chapter, so that I could read what I had read at the time because I really was not digesting the information properly. I think you can tell with these specific reads because they were started, I was very excited about them. If you've watched my TBRs, then you know how excited I was to pick these specific books up. I was starting to enter slumpland toward the latter half of August, and then I didn't really read a whole lot in September, neither did I do so in October, and so at the end of the day, I really haven't read a whole lot as of recent, which is why these haven't been finished as well. And so I, once more, now that I'm more in a reading mood, I'm hoping to fully get these done. And with this one specifically, the reason why it's so exciting is because it is a sci-fi dystopian fantasy book. It's very intersectional and the plot itself is very layered, which I really do find myself very excited about. In this specific dystopian world, we have got a setting in which, in private prison systems specifically, there are these gladiator-style competitions that allow people to fight and earn their freedom. The narrative specifically follows our two main characters who are not only fighters but also lovers. One of them who is very near to earning her freedom. However, when the time is right, she decides to make one bold statement to really upturn exactly how the system is looking like at the start of the book. Right from the jump, the writing is incredibly consistent, incredibly immersing. I think the issue with the reading experience with this one primarily was the fact that my brain just did not want to engage with reading, because otherwise the writing for this one, based on what I read, is phenomenal. Next up, I've got the Thursday Murder Club. Now in this one, we follow a group of retired citizens who all live in a retirement home, and they convene every Thursday in order to figure out these different unsolved crimes. They really do have a passion for it, and one day they decide to actually embark on a journey of figuring out a real life ongoing case, because they'll believe that they'll do a far better job at it than the actual police. And right from the jump, the humor in this one is something that I both liked and didn't. I think the way that it's written sometimes comes across to me as a little overwritten, and then at times also it seems to drag on descriptions that, while I'm sure it makes sense to the plot, it makes a drag for me as a reader. And I think specifically for a type of narrative like this where I'm always seeking something to propel the narrative forward, it really wasn't working for me so much structurally, and so I've kept it as an ongoing read in the hopes that I'll I'll re-pick this back up and potentially finish this. I'm currently 22 chapters into this on page 77. I am pretty sure that I got further than this, and I decided to also take my bookmark back because again, my attention span was not there. Again, a common theme you'll see here is I'm pretty sure when I was reading this, I do think I broke the 150 page threshold, but when I thought back to the information, I actually could not compute half of what I had read, and so I decided to take my bookmark back, and then I haven't picked this back up. This is one of those books where I have to decide, do I actually want to finish it, or do I just want to DNF it for my own mental sake and then just let it go? Maybe it's just not for me. And so still simmering on that because I think the audiobook was really good and the audiobook could be a good shout. So maybe now with a better headspace, with a better attention span, maybe my brain would like to engage with it better. So I'm holding out hope that maybe I will actually get to finish that one. And last but not least, The Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I am obviously going to finish this before the year is over. I was going through my read very slowly because as you can tell, this is heavily annotated and I was very excited about the prospect of, again, defacing the book and annotating as much as possible and vlogging it and filming it, and I still have all of the accumulated footage of the things that I did read. So by the time that I do finish this, you guys will get a vlog. It'll just probably take a little bit longer. I obviously love the story and the narrative and following how Stark, who resides in Winterfell, as King Robert's hand dies and the Stark patriarch is asked to go to the main city in order to become the king's hand and most trusted advisor. It really upends the life of this family, and we see a lot of moving parts politically from the Starks and the Baratheons and also the Lannisters, who are all kind of very embroiled with each other, as well as the remaining Targaryens that reside in another continent, hoping to make it back to the mainland in order to reclaim the throne that Robert Baratheon stole from their father. It's a very complex story, very much modeled after a lot of history, and I find that incredibly fascinating. I really obviously am loving and enjoying this. I do have to finish it. I will. That is the hope, the move, and the plan and the vibe and everything. And those are the 3 books that Mel is still reading that I never finished, and they've been ongoing since August. For question number 2, we have got, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of year? And oh boy, do I do as well. I recently uploaded an entire fall book recommendations video detailing what I, based on my reading this year, recommend you guys to read for the fall or even just for the end of year season if you're looking for more cozy and atmospheric reads. And the first is, of course, A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. I don't think I'll ever tire of recommending this book. This book is simply wonderful. It feels like a warm hug. It feels so hopeful, and it's such a beautiful take on humanity and exactly what makes us as human. In this one, we follow sibling Dex, who is quite tired of city life. They find themselves incredibly overwhelmed and sort of weighed down by these notions of socializing and complying with job descriptions and really living up to all of the responsibilities of city folk and all that it brings with it. And so they decide that they want to become a tea monk and offer tea services amongst many different towns and cities as they ride on their ox bike to go from town to town. They do so, they embark on this journey also under the pretext of learning more about the world and nature, which is something that they haven't really gotten to experience ever, because living in the city, they have never breathed full fresh air or seen beautiful lakes or seen these very populous areas full of trees and the greenest of grasses. And so it serves with a double purpose of not only finding themselves, but to also help others and potentially find a more fulfilling existence. In the midst of doing so, sibling Dex encounters a robot called Mosscap, who is tasked with first contact with humans. Robots have been a thing in the world for quite a long time. In fact, they were part of the manufacturing industry and they gained consciousness at some point. And then they decided that they wanted to lay down their tools and go into the woods, into faraway places, so that humans would not bother them or use them anymore. Humanity took that very kindly and empathetically and said, off you go. In fact, we won't even contact you. We charge you with the idea of doing first contact whenever you guys are ready to do so. And when Mosscap encounters sibling Dex, it asks them a very important question, which is, what exactly do humans need? And it ends up being this really nuanced, beautiful, hopeful, complex look into humanity and exactly what we as people need. It often isn't the same answer for everybody. Every person has different needs. Every community has different needs. And seeing Mosscap as essentially a robot, an entity, an object, if we will, a non-humanoid species, seeing it understand all of these very complicated or seemingly so notions translations was so beautiful. The way that Mosca breaks down a lot of these ideas and a lot of these rhetorics and provides a different side of the coin, provides a different opinion, I thought was incredibly beautiful. And it revitalized sort of the love and excitement for life as I was reading it. It was extremely comforting as somebody who finds themselves extremely overwhelmed a lot of the time as well, which is a lot of what Sibling Dex shares as a feeling. I found it so deeply moving and beautiful. It is so far a 2-book series. There is going to be more. Don't know when they're coming. I just know that when they do, I'll be reading them because every single book so far has been a 5 stars and it's a really beautiful short, which is also amazing, journey. And I think this is the perfect little book for fall. And then I have got One Dark Window, which at this point you guys may ask, Mel, how are you not tired of recommending One Dark Window? And I simply can't tire of it. It's also a really amazing, deeply atmospheric book. A lot of the aesthetic for this series specifically reminds me a lot of Gothic fairy tales and different motifs in the Gothic realm. I really enjoyed how rich the world building and the magic system were, how different they are to what I typically read. The entire magic system is modeled after tarot cards, so it does kind of give fall, spookier vibes as well if that is something that you're looking for. We follow Elspeth Spindle, our main character, who was infected by an outlawed curse many years ago. In fact, Elspeth and her family have been pretending for a really long time that she is either not sick, never got infected, or that she also didn't get any powers from said infection. However, unbeknownst to her own family, she actually did get powers from said infection. She now lives with a mercurial ancient spirit inside her head, which speaks in riddles and puzzles that she cannot seem to debunk, comprehend, or even put together. And as she traverses through daily life, she encounters a group of highwaymen who are all in a ploy against the king himself in order to remove said plague from the country, the continent, the place that they live in, to save the very people of said land. The book gets even more exciting once you realize that these people are closer to the king than not, because I think it adds a level of complexity into the story, which I found so entertaining and complex. I loved it. And then when you get into the magic system in itself, like, yes, there are people that have abilities. However, the magic system based on tarot cards is something that anybody in this world can use. It's not limited to certain individuals, which I thought made it even more interesting, the fact that anybody could pick up these Providence cards and use them at a cost. And then when you get into the intricacies of the backstory and the entire motif behind these cards and the world itself, the nature magic that is very prominently displayed throughout the duology, I thought all of it worked, and it works beautifully for fall. So if you haven't picked this up, I'm just saying, maybe you should. For question number 3, we have got, is there a new release you are still waiting for? And if I had filmed this maybe 3 weeks ago, I think I would have more answers than I do at present. However, there are a couple of releases that still have yet to come out that I am definitely keeping my little eyeballs on because they seem like very exciting reads. The very first one is A Cruel Thirst by Angela Montoya. In this one, we follow a vampire hunter and a new fledgling vampire. Now, Carolina, our main character, really wants to go into the vampire hunting family business. However, her father has got very different plans for her, and in fact, he wants her to go off to a different town, a different city, find a husband, settle down, and just comply with her womanly duties. Definitely not what she wants to do. And one day as she's walking around town, I suppose, I really don't know how the situation comes up, she ends up finding a sediento, Lalo, who is our love interest, that really changes her perspective on what she knows about vampires. And this person also shares kind of that deep hatred of vampires. This is somebody who had a lot of expectations in the family business to really take care of not only the business but also his family, and now the plans are suddenly upended by this new transformation, and the two will partner up not only romantically but also to take out fellow sedientos. I think the concept of the book sounds amazing. It is a fantasy romance, so I'm hoping that it's a good one, because you guys already know I'm constantly looking for good fantasy romances with vampires specifically, and so I'm hoping that this one hits the spot, but it sounds very promising. I also have Win and Truth on my list by Brandon Sanderson. I think it's a given. However, will I be reading it in 2024? Definitely not. I still have a lot of the Cosmere to catch up on before I even consider getting into Win and Truth. I have got to finish Mistborn Era 1. I have got to finish the rest of the Stormlight series. There are scattered books that I also have to read in order to fully get the extent of Stormlight Era 1, if that's what we're calling it at this point. I don't know how we're breaking it up because I know it's a 10-book series. However, 5 books are its own thing, and then the latter half books are their own thing, so I really don't know where we're heading after Wind and Truth. It is very exciting though I wish I could commiserate with everybody on the excitement of this release and read it and vlog it as it's coming out and everybody's freaking out about it. I have even thought about perhaps just finishing Stormlight and getting through the 3 books I still have got to read without reading anything else in the Cosmere and just going blind into Wind and Truth. Maybe if I won't get to its fullest extent what it's talking about, but then I think about missing part of the experience by doing so, and so I kind of backtrack in wanting to do it. But trust me, las ganas no hacen falta. It is definitely what I'd love to do, but will it actually happen? I don't know. I don't know. But technically, Wind and Truth is on my list, and I love the cover for it, and I'm very excited about it. Private Rights by Julia Armfield is also a part of my list. This is one of those interesting releases where it released a couple months ago in the UK, and now it's going to release in the States in December. So I'm counting it just for funsies sake, and also because it technically is not out yet. With this one specifically, this is the same author for Our Wives Under the Sea, which I really loved earlier this year. This one specifically is a King Lear retelling, specifically following the lives of different queer sisters as they fall in love and the world changes. Now, I don't know the full extent of the synopsis. I do know, however, that it has been raining in this world for such a long time that the earth has now reshaped itself, and a lot of those underground, more hidden, even maybe forgotten religions have resurfaced as part of this restructuring, and these 2 estranged sisters reconnect after the passing of their father. However, they find that their own duty on this earth and the plan that was kind of destined for them is a lot deeper and more complex than they initially anticipated, and that it will sort of impact the overall health and view of the whole world. I think it sounds super interesting. If Our Wives Under the Sea is anything to go by, this is probably, I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, will be one of those books where it leaves a lot up to readers' interpretation and where it'll give the reader a lot of credit, and that to me is very exciting. So I can't wait to get that read. I still haven't figured out if I want the UK or the US cover, but that's no problem. I'm sure we'll figure it out. And last but not least, as far as anticipated releases go, I have got A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana. Now with this one, I kind of toss it back and forth between how excited I am and not, just because I did read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and I didn't necessarily love it. However, I think for this new installment, having read A Very Secret Society and understanding what the vibe in the mood is, I think it helps me adjust expectations when going into the second book and figuring out what my experience will be down the line, because it still sounds very exciting. We follow our main character, Sarah Swan, who got into a lot of trouble in her magical guild because she decided to resurrect her late aunt Jasmine and lost her powers in the process of doing so, and was exiled from her guild as well. Now she finds this ancient text that will allegedly help her recover her powers and reinstate her magic to what it once was, and with that she finds that the only person who can actually help her do all of these things is a historian that very much doesn't want to help her, and things kind of go from there. I really have figured out that Sangu Mandana's books, although they are very like cozy fantasy, they do put an emphasis on the romance quite a bit, and so I'm excited about this. I think the cover is stunning, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that I'll actually enjoy this more than The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. What are 3 books you want to read before the end of year? Now this one, I'm not gonna lie, was a little bit hard because I wanted to add like 5 books in here, and then I realized, Mel, let's just keep it contained to 3, let's keep it realistic, and let me just look through my shelves and make some really good final decisions, like the 3 books that I really want to read. And I did pull out 3 that I think I'm going to be reading in the coming days. I mean, I know one of them for sure I'm going to be starting in the next couple of days, and then another one that I am also going to read this month. So the matter is, will the 3rd one also be read this month, or will I just read that in December? Choices need to be made, but all 3 of these books are definitely in my end of year TBR, mental TBR situation. You guys are gonna kill me for this one, but Intermezzo by Sally Rooney, I am very hopeful I am going to enjoy and also read before the end of the year. In this one, we follow 2 grieving brothers in the wake of their father's death. One who is a very reputable, to my understanding, Dublin lawyer who finds himself entangled with 2 different women for different reasons, as well as his brother who is a chess player who also finds his own life intertwined with that of an older woman who has now entered his life. And we see both of these brothers' journey in grief and figuring out their lives and what now will happen after this big event in their lives. I don't know anything anything else beyond that. I am keeping my knowledge to cero, nada, so that I can actually potentially be surprised by Sally Rooney and enjoy one of her books. I am hoping and praying that that is the case. You guys have seen this book here before on the channel, and that's because I owned another copy and I did start reading it, but then I realized halfway through during sprints, actually not halfway through the book, but like halfway through the sprinting session, there were actually quite a bit of blank pages or fading pages to the point where nothing was legible. And so I decided to get myself another copy of The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. And so I am going to read this literally next week. I'm very excited. Well, actually not next week, but like going into like end of week. I am very excited about this. I do have the audiobook on deck, so fret not, because it is in the plans to listen to Andy Serkis narrate this to me because it's simply too good not to, right? I really love the films for The Lord of the Rings. I've talked about this a ton. I have watched them a ton. I have never read the books because I've always been heavily intimidated by them. I've been told you may or may not like them. Sometimes they drag on. There's like a lot of songs in here. And so like, will you love it? Will you not love it? I think it'll be up to fate and your brain depending on when you pick this up. And so I'm hoping that I will absolutely love it when I do pick it up and that it'll be a great time, because I can't imagine that the source material for such great films would not be better than the experience of watching the films, and that I wouldn't love it equally as much, if not more. So I'm very excited about this. In The Lord of the Rings, we find ourselves placed in Middle-earth following the aftermath of the Rings of Power story, where we know the Elven Smiths crafted different rings and distributed them along different kinds, and as Sauron specifically crafts a ring to rule above all other rings and to control all of them. Said ring is obtained by Bilbo Baggins in the story of The Hobbit, and specifically in The Fellowship of the Ring, we see Bilbo entrust his cousin, Frodo Baggins, this very same ring to take care of. And this seemingly small task takes Frodo alongside other companions called the Fellowship of the Ring on a journey of not only protecting said power, but to also destroy Sauron once and for all, who has now made a comeback. It is obviously much more complex than that and so much more beautiful than that explanation, which was kind of half chewed up, but I am still, again, very excited to get this read, despite the initial mishap of my first copy. And last but not least, for this specific question, I have got A Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Rorick. This is entirely Aaron's from Booked and Busy's fault, because Aaron has been raving consistently about Melissa K. Rorick's work. These are dark fantasy romances. I have never read anything like this. I am very excited to pick this up. To my understanding, which I could be wrong, but I'm trying not to look at the synopsis at all, because I really don't want to build up expectations for anything, and I want to let myself be surprised by the author and the work, hopefully in really good ways. But to my understanding, in this specific world, we follow a world in which there are different kind of fae, and they are all ranked differently, and those who are higher ranked tend to feed from lesser fae, and I think we follow one of those really high ranked ones and one that's not so highly ranked one, and their relationship as they convene in this specific practice. I really don't know anything else beyond that, and I low-key kind of don't want to, so if I'm wrong, tell me in the comments, but like, I know I'm likely wrong because I very well could be. But this, friends, will be read very soon, and it's a chunker, but I'm very excited about it. Did I have to get the physical copy? No, but just in case, I got it, because why not? Next up we have got, is there a book you think could still shock you and become your favorite book of the year? Now, this specific question is a little bit tricky because despite having found 4 and 5 stars, I don't think I have found the book that has made me lose my mind this year, that I would call my absolute favorite that I read in 2024. I don't think I have found that, and it sounds kind of hopeless, but I don't know that I'll actually find it. I just don't know if it is the year of me finding an all-time favorite. Maybe Lord of the Rings could be. Maybe Reign of Shadows and Endings could be something that I absolutely obsess over. Maybe one of the other books I'm planning to read soon will also be that. However, I don't think I have got anything specific that I look at and I am predicting to become the most absolute favorite. Like, they may be highly rated, but as far as like favorite, I think it's hard to when nothing feels like a timeless favorite. I feel like they feel like temporary favorites. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm over explaining a very simple question. I think that if anything, I'm literally looking at my at my unread shelf. I think that if anything were to give me that feeling, maybe It could be maybe Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, because it is dystopian, very different to what I typically read. It is set in 2024, so I think there's something special about reading it this year specifically because of the setting and because it may be more relevant now than ever, that I think really may sway me into the realm of saying it will be more of a timeless favorite than not. However, I can't say it with certainty because I just have been feeling kind of meh about everything this year. It's hard to tell. I know Parable of the Sower is primarily set in 2024, but we do, I believe, see the beginning of this social unrest that is caused by climate and economic changes in the early 2020s. And we specifically follow our main character, Lauren, who lives in a gated community alongside her father and other people in said community. And despite the world living in a state of chaos, her community remains very ignorant, willfully so, at the things that are happening beyond their gates. And Lauren, as an empath, finds herself wanting to speak up about the horrors that she is actively observing or hearing about that her community continues to ignore, and that unleashes a chain of events that I don't think anybody really in the story particularly expects. And with that, the potential of a new faith coming up, I think it's all very interesting. And again, the appeal of reading that in the year that it takes place in, it's quite good. And last but not least, our very last question is, have you already started making reading plans for next year? And the answer is kind of yes. I think more than other years, I am more organized with my reading. I mean, even just now in terms of making TBRs and pulling out things from the TBR jar to really guide me to what I should be picking up every single month. And I have liked that quite a bit. In terms of organizing how many books I'm reading and where the books are going to which videos, I actually quite liked that from the end of 2023 into 2024. And so I definitely want to reimagine the TBR jar and bring it back anew for 2025. And so that's something that's definitely in the works. Not necessarily at the moment, but that will continue to progress before the end of the year so I can finalize plans and prompts and figure out what that's going to look like for next year. I also think that as far as organizing my reading and completing reading challenges and goals for myself, I think that continuing with the series finisher vlog series that I have got here on my channel, where I'm trying to finish every single series I'm in the middle of, is actually quite good at minimizing the amount of unread books on my shelves. A lot of these series that I've got ongoing is not only just the singular book to finish it, but most of them I'd argue I have to go through 5 books, 3 books, 4 books in order to finish these series. And so I think really tackling this project so that I can get all of these books off my unread shelves and into my read shelves, I think can be a really great way to structure my reading for 2025, as well as actually my Read It or Unhaul It series, which you'll see the first episode of in November. I think that'll also be a really great way to realistically look at books and go, if I like it, I keep it. If I don't like it, I'll essentially rehome it. And if I pull out a book that I'm really not excited to read and I kind of dread the idea of it, and I've been pushing it off for quite some time, maybe it's time to let that go too. And so I think these are all plans that I am looking at in order to structure my reading on a month-to-month basis. So I'm not looking at reading plans necessarily in terms of these are the books that I want to read next year, but more so in terms of how do I minimize my physical TBR. And then on top of that, there are very exciting reading challenges that I am planning for Patreon specifically for 2025 that as a community we'll be embarking on. And so if you want to look at more of that by the time that the new year has arrived, then Patreon may be a really good place to check all of that. And I'll obviously share more details as it gets closer to it. There are very exciting things happening on Patreon for 2025, including a rebrand and restructuring of tiers and benefits. And so if you guys want to ever join us on Patreon, the link for that is always down below. It's a great way to help the channel keep itself afloat, to afford all of these different expensive equipment that are necessary to run this operation smoothly. And then also you get a ton of things back as far as benefits go. I'm talking a bunch of different live shows, a book club, a Discord server, a lot of hangouts and chats with me personally, as far as unlocking an entire community of readers that really is into this thing and probably find a lot of like-minded people that can potentially become like a second home and a place of solace for you guys. And so I am very excited about that. And I think that also goes along the plans of 2025 reading that are not yet final, but they will be very soon. So the answer is yes, I'm planning, but it's not done yet. Like, there's still a lot to do. And that is it for today, friends. That is the end of year book tag. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's a more short and straightforward sort of video to give you guys one final update in terms of reading and what I'm looking forward to before the year ends. Again, feel free to reply to any of these questions and prompts down in the comments because I'd love to see what you guys are gonna get up to reading-wise before the year is over. So feel free free to reply to all of them, any of them, two of them, one of them, really up to you. And if you reach the very end of the video, let us leave a sword emoji down in the comments for honestly all of the fantasy books that are currently in my want to finish list before the year ends. And so any sort of in relation to fantasy emojis that you want to leave if you got to this point, be it a sword or something else, make sure to leave them down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already for more content like this. And as always, if you want to support the channel further, Patreon is always linked down below. It helps a ton to, again, help things run smoothly, and you get a ton of benefits back. I think the Patreon rebrand of 2025 is going to be the most exciting thing I think I have ever done in terms of rebranding and restructuring the community in itself. And so I think 2025 will definitely not be something you guys want to miss. And so I will definitely encourage you guys to check that out because it also, again, helps the channel a ton. I love you guys so much, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!